Welcome back, everybody. This one is going to open up a can of worms. When I say worms, questions. I want to introduce you to our next panelist, a specialist in her own field, a very dear friend of mine, a member of our church, Sister Barbara Bagetto. Sister Barbara, I want you to introduce yourself. Tell us who you are. Tell us what you do in your 9 to 5. Sister Barbara is going to be telling us of the what and the how, power, control, will, and a few more things. So, Sister Barbara, over to you. Please tell us who you are first. Tell us what you're going to talk about and go ahead.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Pastor Femi. So I'm Barbara. So my background is I'm a trained probation officer. I worked in probation and in prison for many years. And where I actually worked with people who were convicted of domestic violence offences. Some of those offences were very serious, where they receive life sentences for the offence, and to children, women, or male partners as well. So because I worked with male and women, and I worked with young people in a young offenders institution who also were convicted of violent offences, and that brought me to think about and asking God, okay, God, this is really extreme. When in my work with some of the young people or adults that committed those very serious violence offences, which sometimes included taking someone else's life, I was asking God and thinking, what's going on here? Why is this happening? And in my work, I asked the young people and people that were convicted of these serious offences, how did they get there? How did they use the violence as the solutions? And when we know, obviously we were doing a lot of therapeutic work in prison as well, because I worked in one young offender institution and I was managing the therapeutic wing. I asked the young people why, what happened. And when we unpicked, it was lack of understanding, lack of knowledge, the thinking that violence is a solution and or is almost a learned behavior. So with that, I thought, okay. And then when we done some of the work, the therapeutic work, some of the young people and others who said, oh, I wish I knew this when I was younger. I wish, I didn't get involved into all of this violence and so on. So that brought me into saying, okay, I want to do something with people earlier before they get to that stage. And so I went back into working with children and family in social care, in parenting, because I think it's very important to work at early stages with family. And that's why I'm so passionate about what the ARC is doing, concentrating on family work, which is the key. So that's my story a little bit. So I do a lot of work. I'm, obviously as a trained probation officer and delivering offending behavior program, I worked a lot with people who commit very serious offences, but I also work with the victims as well. And at the moment, obviously, I'm working with children and families overall. And so that is a little bit of my background. Obviously, I listened to what Pastor Anna was saying, and the speaker after Pastor Anna, I'm going to expand a little bit more on that and the power and control will. And I wanted to say that as humans, we all have the potential to become abusive, but abuse is a choice. And I think we need to hold on to it. We have a choice to be abusive or not to be abusive. Despite all the triggers, upbringing, being neglected as a children, being abused, environmental difficulties, financial difficulties, but we still have a choice. Some people choose to abuse, some people choose not to abuse, and we explore why. I also wanted to talk about domestic abuse versus parental conflict, because I wanted to say that disagreement within an intimate relationship or within a friendship is normal, we're not going to be having the same opinion all the time. It is how we go about resolving that disagreement that count. Oh, I forgot to say that at present I work a lot with parental conflict as well. So it doesn't meet the threshold for domestic abuse, but we work with a lot of parents. We do multi-systemic family therapy where parents are going through parental conflict, which is slightly different from domestic abuse, but there is a very fine line sometimes between parental conflict and domestic abuse. But I thought I wanted to talk to you about the parental conflict as well, because sometimes, as you know, the speaker was saying and Pastor Femi was saying, it's not about condemnations. Obviously, we're human, we all show fault sometimes, but at the same time, we have a responsibility to take charge of our own behaviors and, you know, put it into a Christian perspective as well, asking the Holy Spirit to support us to make changes in our behaviors. So first of all, I'm going to talk about a little bit more about domestic abuse. I know that we talked, Pastor Anna talked about domestic abuse, and the second speaker talked about domestic abuse. I'm going to explore it through the power and control wheel. What do we mean? And then I'm also going to talk about the equality wheel. What does it look like? The opposite. What is a healthy relationship looking like? And when we're talking about healthy relationships, we're not talking about perfection, and we're not talking about free from disagreements. We're talking about resolving disagreement without the use of violence or power and control. So first of all the behaviors that Pastor Anna and the second speaker talked about are behaviors that are come within the power and control wheel, the first stop wheel. So the power and control, what does it actually is? It is when one individual have power and control toward another individual. This is when we're talking about around intimate relationship between a partner, between two partners. Equally, power and control can happen in all form of relationships. It could be happening between parent and child relationship. So we have, when parents are very authoritarian toward the children and they use the power and control will to parent. Also, it could happen between a child toward their parents. And also could happen toward between extended families. On a larger scales, the power and control happen in family violence, in community violence. When we talk about community violence around gang affiliations. On a larger scales, we're talking about power and control, in worldwide as well. So let's explore, but for the purpose of today, we're going to explore what we mean power and control in intimate relationships. So power and control will is about special privileges. It is about the belief, what we believe that I am better than you. I have more privileges because I own the money, because I work, or because I am the man and I'm the breadwinner, and you are the woman, so you need to submit. So that is a kind of believing that your special privilege as a man, you have the power over the woman. However, I must say, the recently in my job, we also have a lot of intimate relationship aggression between where the woman also abuse the man, and also when both partners abuse each other. But obviously, for the purpose of the research, we do know that women, the statistic shows that the impact of domestic violence is more on women. There is more women who are abused, but we also cannot forget that there is a lot of men who are abused as well. So going back to the power and control wheel, economic abuse is about, like Anna was saying, I own the money. Because I go to work and I own the money, I'm entitled to buy myself more than you, or and that can happen, if the woman is bringing on the money. Intimidation is, you know, when the partner purposely intimidate the other partner to create a power and control situation where they have power over the other partner. Sexual abuse is not just about sexual intercourse or coercion, about, oh, you know, if you don't give me sex, then I'm gonna go somewhere else to find it. That is the coercion as well. Sexual abuse is also about exposing the other partner to inappropriate sexual content. So it's not just about the actual act of sexual abuse. Threats. The threats said, well, if you don't do it this way, I'm going to leave you. If you don't listen. So the threats, if you think about a scale between 1 and 10, it's not just extreme behaviors. Some of these behaviors can be very subtle and very acceptable in our, you know, in our communities, in our families. Obviously, the physical abuse is about physical contact, physical abuse. It doesn't have to leave bruises. It could be a push. It could be invading somebody's personal space, so that person feels frightened and intimidated. Also, the isolation, which Pastor Anna and the second speaker touched on, is about isolating the victim from everybody else, and, you know, make the victim feel powerless. And emotional abuse takes place in many places, in many ways. It's not just about swearing at that person. It's also about slowly taking away the self-confidence. You know, complaining about their parenting skills, complaining about their food. You know, there is various way that is done. So the power and control wheel is obviously creating oppression. One person have the power, the other person is oppressed. And that lead to, obviously, is quite clear that that is not love, but it's control. And that leads to various, you know, negative impact, not just in the family, but in the community as a whole, because we know that children that are exposed to domestic violence and learn to operate from a power and control will are more likely to do less well at school. They're more likely to have low self-esteem, and the more likely is a pulling factor toward criminal and sexual exploitation. So when we're looking at just family violence, parent control, it's not something that just happens at home. It impacts the community as well. It's like a snowball effect. What I wanted to talk to you about now is, well, what does a healthy relationship look like? Because problems in families and problems in bringing up children will arise. But what is the difference? So the difference is that in the equality will, there is obviously the opposite of the power and control. There is honesty and accountability. Both partners are honest about their limits, their strengths, and their area of development. But there is accountability about saying, you know what, hands up, that is not the way, you know, I should have dealt with the situation. There is shared responsibility when it comes to finance, when it comes to the childcare of the children, despite who is bringing the money home. You know, of course, sometimes one partner could be more skilled at managing money, but that doesn't mean that you have to control against the other partner. It's about sharing the expertise and say, do you know what? This is what it is. What do you think about that? I'm thinking about this. Let's see how we're going this way, and next time we're doing your way. You know, it's about acceptance and equality. Obviously, again, the economic partnership is not just because one person earn more or they bring the money home, that they own the money and they can do what they want. It's about involving their partner as well and say, okay, this is the money that we got. this is allocated to the children, school shoes or uniform, our holiday or whatever. What can we do about that? Do we need to get an extra job? It's about communication and checking with the other partner rather than controlling the finance. Respect is such a big word as well, because respect means different things for different people. But respect is about respecting each other's boundaries as well, respecting each other's personal spaces. And again, communication. There is also about negotiation and fairness. So it's all about communication and negotiating a common denominator. We put also responsible parents, because some of the issues is around difference in co-parenting, and you can have differences, but it's important to be responsible as a parent and have those discussions when the children are not around, and not using the children as a weapon to say, oh, your mom said, oh, your dad said. And also, again, the equality wheel is about non-threatening behavior. I'm going to say again, no relationship is perfect. We all are human. We all have our limits. We will have disagreements. We will be cross, because we will experience different feelings here, but we do have the ownership to take charge of our behavior is, so we can feel angry but not become threatening to our partner. And in that way is knowing our triggers and understanding when we need to take the time off, and understanding that our partner might have a different temperament from us as well. And therefore, if I want to resolve everything right now, my partner might not be able to do that right now. They might need time to process the information. So it's about, again, coming to a compromise. And also, the equality wheel is about trust and support, trusting each other and supporting each other. Now, it seems to be very easily said and done. However, obviously, when there is a pattern of controlling and coercing behavior, even obviously for the people that are actually used to be abusive, and not being naive, because obviously I worked in probation for a long time, and when I worked in probation, I thought a lot of men and women that were abusers didn't actually know how to be in the equality wheel. So it was lack of education, lack of parental modeling when they were growing up, lack of understanding. Obviously, it's not an excuse, but it's how we're moving people from a power and control wheel when they are the abuser to understanding the equality wheel. And again, obviously, I work with children and families. Very important to work in a way that we're not just addressing the victim, but also we educate the person that is doing the abuse, because it's a snowball effect. Some of the people that are abusers are actually young children who experience domestic violence when growing up. So it's like a snowball effect. Obviously, we need to keep safe, and we can't, it's not an excuse, but what I'm saying is there is hope in terms of people changing. I think in my probation work, I come across only a couple of people that were, I felt, in my human mind as a professional, they were not able to make any changes, but God can make any changes anyway, can deliver people from any sort of behaviors. So the first slide looked a little bit of the dynamics around power and control, and also what it's like to be in a healthy relationship, what it should be like. Here, I want to bring to your attention about parental conflict and arguments within an intimate relationship, which is different from domestic violence. But again, there is a fine line, because if arguments are unresolved and arguments are constant, then they can become domestic abuse if they escalate. So what we say in one of our programs is that there are very loving parents, but we at times have very destructive patterns of behavior. So when we get locked into an argument, there are three ways that we might deal unhealthily with this argument. And one of these ways is blaming and blaming. So two people start blaming each other. You did this and you did that. And we can get kind of stuck and dig the heels, and it's an unhealthy pattern. The other unhealthy pattern that we can get stuck is blaming, ignoring. So one partner does the blaming. Oh, you didn't do the dish, and you're not listening, and you're not listening to my needs, and you're not understanding me. And the other one, thinking perhaps that they don't want to make the argument worse, they start ignoring, but not knowing that actually that would fuel the argument even more. And so we can get stuck there. And the other destructive pattern is that people start ignoring each other. There is no communication. So when there is no communication, actually the children are used. Tell your dad, tell your mom, or even indirectly. And actually, it's quite damaging. As you can see, I put a child in the middle. So these are not the dynamic of domestic abuse. This is not the dynamic of parental conflict, which is different. There are different thresholds. So the threshold for domestic abuse, as we can see in the power and control wheel, is where one person has the power and control over the other partner. When it's parental conflict is when two people argue and they get stuck into the argument, okay? Which is equally damaging as much as domestic abuse. Is actually very emotionally damaging to the children, because children have split loyalty toward the parents. And also they think, what is going on? What side do I need to take? So it's something to be aware of as well. It doesn't have to be drastic as domestic abuse. It can also be very subtle in parental argument to impact children and the family as a whole, because we model that. We model that to our children. Right. I want to bring you back to the power and control wheel. Now, the power and control wheel causes suppressions of pain and fear into the person that is receiving that power and control, because in actual fact is oppression. You've been, people that are in that power and control dynamic are being oppressed. That oppression itself is like a spring effect. What happened to the spring? You pull it, you pull it, you pull it, and then whoosh. That spring effect, when we suppress pain and fear, can go either way. Can go into aggressive behavior toward others, indiscriminate violence, and negative attitudes. So again, I bring it back to somebody that witnessed domestic violence or been really physical chastised when, as a young person, exposed to family violence as a young person. Now they externalize, as an adult, they externalize that violence, and then the circle continues. They become the perpetrator. It can also go inside, because we're all different. It can also go inside self, anger against self, which is depression and suicide, or drug and alcohol abuse, or physical problem. As we know, if we keep things bottled up, it will affect our blood pressure, our breathing, and can have an impact on our physical health as well. So it can go either way. Now, so it's something to be aware of, that being that power and control dynamic is not healthy neither for the person who is doing the abuse, but also the receiving person. I wanted to bring your attention to 3 different ways sometimes we deal with things in our family, because I know that Pastor Anna mentioned it and the second speaker mentioned it a little bit. Sometimes there is a lot of shame around domestic abuse and abuse in general. And the way it works and why it's related to substance and alcohol use is because it can be intergenerational. So it passes on from one family to another. Also, there is a lot of shame around it, and almost stigma, and people want to keep it in the family. So that is how they're related. But actually the key is put in a sense that actually this is not acceptable. We're not going to keep it in the family. This is not how it should work. So I wanted to talk to you about the difference between interdependency versus codependency. So independency is when the family has a problem and everybody sacrifice for one person, okay, which is not healthy. The second one is codependency, that everybody cover up for that person. So there is a person that maybe they got issues or they lost their job or whatever, and they start becoming abusive to their wife and their children. But you know what? We're gonna cover for you because you're going through a difficult time. And that again is not an healthy way of dealing with things, because it's not helping the individual, it's not helping the family. What we want to achieve is what we call interdependency, where we have a problem, but you will have, we can solve it all together, but take into account every person in the family, not just one person. And sometimes, you know, we can get stuck into codependency or independency. You know, what does it look like in real situations? So say like there is a father that has a drinking problem, and okay, the family said, okay, we're not gonna, we're gonna make sure there is no noise in the house, so you're not stressed. But that's not gonna be good for the children, because the children want to, the children, depending on what age they need to play, they need to, you know, they need to be free from it. They cannot be you know, be on eggshells because somebody's got an alcohol problem. The other codependency could be, okay, you have an alcohol problem, rather than you stealing, we're going to go and buy the alcohol for you so you'll be home and be quiet. But that doesn't serve the purpose, because it doesn't help the person to address the issues. So what does the interdependency look like? Do you know what? There is a problem. When you are drunk, you become violent, you become abusive to the children, you become abusive to the wife. We help you as a family. We need to seek support outside here. You might need to spend some time outside the home to address your alcohol issues, but we're going to be here for you. That is interdependency, because you're not giving in everything to that person, but you supporting that person without you then becoming dependent. Okay. The other things that we notice when working with whatever is domestic abuse or parental conflict is people neglect their marital problems and they don't work on it. There is no communication, and therefore it becomes the snowball effect. So working a lot with parents who are separated, who actually are separated and divorced, and the same problem they had when they were living together are the same problem they're experiencing when they are divorced. And that will be things around communications, understanding each other's needs, understanding the children's needs. So most, in my experience, most successful families are those that when there is a problem, they're able to sit down and talk about it, and understanding, forgiveness, and also managing those emotions. This is a little bit about people who, when you are, whatever is domestic abuse or whatever is parental conflict, one thing that we only say to the person that is abusive or they lose their rag very quickly is the steps involving taking time out as an adult to adult. So this is only a strategy not to be abusive, okay? So there are certain strategy, obviously certain steps. So first of all, if when you are in a conflict with your partner or you are in a disagreement, if you just walk away, there is no time out. That it can be considered ignoring, and that will escalate the situation. But when couple are calm and they can discuss and say, do you know what? when I get a little bit uptight, rather than being abusive, I rather prefer to leave the situation and not come back. That's different from walking off, switching your phone off, and using that as a controlling behavior. Okay, timeout need to be discussed when both partners are calm and have an agreement on when they feel that there is a little bit of, you know, things escalating, that is okay to take time out. And for the person mainly who is the abuser, who abuses, to say, do you know what, I need to take my time out. I'll come back in 10 minutes when I'm calmer. I don't want to say things that are abusive towards you. I'm going to leave the room, or I am going to go for a walk. So now I had, when I worked with people that obviously abused, they were saying to me, oh, you know, I tried to do that, but my partner was following me around. And that's why it's so important to have that agreement when both partners are calm. So set aside time to discuss with the other adult the ground rules for timeout. Choose a time to talk when things are calm between you. Decide on a non-aggressive, non-verbal signal that you are calling a timeout. A well-known one is making a eye sign. Somebody doesn't work like that, or just say, you know what, I'm feeling I'm getting out of control. I need to take some time out. Decide how long you will live for and where you will go. Ensure that you tell the other adult how long you will be gone for in a calm way, because simply walking out is abusive. So the timeout needs to be actually spoken about when both parents are calm, because it's different a timeout like this than just walking out from an argument because you want to undermine your partner. Think about a calming place for you to go and things that you might do. Don't drink or drive. Don't go to the pub, even if your initial intention isn't to drink. If you're going to talk to a friend, make sure that that isn't someone who will just take your side against the other adult, as that likely to make matters worse. If there are specific reasons why you cannot leave the house, because sometimes we cannot leave the house because we have children, negotiate in advance with the other adult a space in the room where you can go. You know, so again, could be before an incident of domestic abuse, and I'm talking for people who abuse, to take the time out and go to a different room. Or even if there is a parental conflict, agree before that conflict, when you both calm, in a discussion. Or, you know, when we get a little bit out, you know, out of hand and we don't understand each other, where is your safe space? I'm going to use the bedroom. I'm going to go in the toilet, you know, obviously providing the children are safe. So you know already the mechanics. So you're not in that, in each other's space. If the other adults follow you, ask calmly. They give you time to calm down and explain why you need the time out. If they don't, leave the house, obviously. Agree arrangement for coming back. Leave and go back at the agreed time. Don't be early or late. Explain that although the other adult does not have to agree to the use of the timeout, doing it in a structured way with clear rules and boundaries, and in a way that it has been explained to them, is more likely to be feel helpful. I just wanted to say that the timeout is used in extreme circumstances when people don't want to become violent, or they don't want the conflict to escalate. We need other skills, because you can come back calmly and then the same problem remain. So you need to have those skills, to have those communication to resolve the conflict. Obviously, there is a difference between the parental conflict and the abusive behavior. What is the difference? That in the parental conflict is lack of skills, but the beliefs is not to control. While in the power and control will, in the domestic abuse, the beliefs of the partner is to control the other partner, which needs more work in terms of challenging that belief. So again, a little bit of communication skill, I statement, rather than say, you make me furious, you are always criticizing my cooking, you can cook your own meal. It's about owning the feeling. I feel upset when my cooking is criticized, as I have worked hard to produce this meal. I'd like some thanks for that. It sounds different, isn't it? Because obviously when we speak you, we put up, all of us put up our barriers. So when we give an I statement in our communication is say how you feel using feeling words, rather than say you make me feel is I feel. I feel uncomfortable when you come into my personal space. I feel upset when you're criticizing my parenting, rather than say you criticize my parenting. Describe the situation without you blaming or criticizing the person involved, avoiding the word you, which I just said. Keep the description general, which is easy for the other person to hear. Be clear about why this is a problem, what need isn't being met. Think about what might help to solve the problem from both points of view. I mean, I was going to say also, obviously, when we do domestic violence work with people who abuse, we teach them all of those skills. So again, it's not an excuse. There is a real lack of skills in healthy conflict resolution, and also the belief system that I am the man and I can, I've got the right to do so. So there is two things here: beliefs that needs to be challenged, but also skills that need to be given to manage conflict in a healthy way. So there is two things. So the step on negotiation skills is about say what you feel using I statement, listening to what the other person has to say to find out what the other person needs or wants. Tell the other person what you think the other person wants so you are sure you understand it. Together think of as many ideas as possible that may bring a solution to the problem. Agree on a solution. Try it. If it doesn't work, start again. I was going to say we cannot use negotiation skills if a person has not addressed their belief system that they are in charge of the relationship. So all of this is good to reduce the risks, but ultimately the person that is doing the abuse need to have support around challenging their beliefs and in a way reprogramming themselves to behave in the equality will, not the power and control will. So, in my experience, in my profession, I don't come across what we call evil people. I come across people who didn't have the best upbringing, and they were not given those skills as young children to develop and know how to function in an intimate relationship. So I think I wanted to end with keeping safe. When obviously I do believe people can change. I do believe that men or women who abuse, with the right support, Holy Spirit as well, I believe, can make changes. However, we also have to use our wisdom to keep safe and protect children. And therefore, we will never know. You can understand the person that abuses, the triggers. You can understand why they're doing it, but you can never prevent fully the harm that's going to happen to yourself and the children. And that's why it's so important when family experiences that abuse, that get support, whether it's the church or external agencies, to reduce the risk of harm. All I say in terms of keep saying safe is that if you know that some of the mechanic of the violence, is important that you speak to appropriate people, not in a way of gossiping, obviously, but speak to somebody that you trust and make plan to make changes for yourself as well. Because we can't change other people. Other people can get help when they want to get help. but ultimately, we have responsibility to ourselves and our children. So we need to be in an interdependency mode. So that doesn't mean that we don't love that person, but we also need to think about how we protect ourselves and our children. And therefore, it's about not, getting to that middle one of the codependency, to pretending that it's not happening or that it's going to be okay. Because obviously I don't want to make people scared, but I come across a lot of people in my work in probation where they actually killed their partner, and they said they actually didn't know what went into them. It was 1 minute of madness. And obviously we know as Christian it could also be a spirit linked to a spiritual thing, you know but it is so concerning that an argument can then escalate into this violence, and that violence can escalate to someone losing their life. So I really want to hold you to that it's important to talk about it, and it's important to challenge about it, and it's important to seek help about it.
That's amazing, Sister Barbara. Thank you so much. It just makes you realize how complex relationships are, and we have to tackle it deliberately. You can't leave your marriage, your home, your relationships to chances. You can't be tossed to and fro by every wind that comes. We must be deliberate, and we must bring that consciousness, that conscious, deliberate mode into the family, into how we deal with things. And a couple of things stuck out for me that I want to pick up on from what Sister Barbara said. Sister Barbara said talking, taking time out. Well, let me deal with the taking time out. Taking time out, agreeing to take time out. And doesn't that just make you understand why during COVID we had a 26% spike? Because people had nowhere to go. People had nowhere to get out the house. There was no work. You were working in the house. You couldn't go out for a meal. You couldn't go out for a drink. So there was no individual space. There was no space for anybody to retreat to. And when Sister Barbara said, agreeing, not walking away, but agreeing on time out. No, it was just like a capped bottle, a pressurized bottle waiting to explode. Sister Barbara also talked about talking. In my family, that's something we do. We always talk, even the hard discussions that you would prefer not to talk about. They're very bitter pills, but they always work out for good. So talking is very important. And another thing that stuck out for me that Sister Barbara was talking about was the impact that this conflicts and this violence leaves with the children. Sister Barbara said something. She said the children who are victims now go on to become adult perpetrators. And the cycle continues. And it has to stop with us. We are the church. We have to say, do you know what? I may have experienced this. I may have been a victim of this. And believe me, there are many adults, even up to an older age, who are still impacted by what they've observed or what they experienced. But even though you have been a victim and have experienced it, the deliberation has to be that it ends with you. It ends with us. It ends with me. My children will not pass this. I will not pass this on to my children. And they will, of course, not pass theirs on to theirs.